Folks, we're back. We're here at an undisclosed, very, very disclosed location. Some might see these garage doors and it might look very, very familiar, but we're gonna go give it a knock. We're gonna see what's inside. We're gonna meet with the man himself. Let's have a look. I was gonna yell to open the garage door, but I'm just gonna give it a knock. They swing out. It's the coolest thing ever. Folks, this might be the best undisclosed location we've ever been to.
What's up?
There he is. The man, the myth, the legend.
Welcome.
Ed Bolian. Ed, for those who live under a rock, please just give us a quick synopsis of who you are and what you do.
I'm Ed Bolian from VinWiki, and upstairs here in my garage, we do car story interviews. So you're here to tell some good car stories.
That's
and
right.
We also keep a few fun cars around. So if you want to come take a look, I'll tell you some stories.
Let's have a look at some supercars, folks.
The first one is the most recent acquisition. This is a 2006 gated manual Lamborghini Gallardo Spyder. I've owned this car twice. I just bought it back. I bought it for the first time in 2020 when me and Tyler Hoover of Hoovy's Garage and Freddie Tavares Hernandez were trying to play Discount Top Gear on YouTube that we call Car Trek. And so the first premise was who could buy the coolest supercar for the price of a C8 Corvette.
You won that, by the way.
Well, I appreciate that. Tyler's the one that actually cares about winning. I care about having the most fun. And Freddie has some lofty goal to repair something that rarely works out that way. But it was in a Santa Monica mudslide, which rendered it a flood title, but now it has been rebuilt in the state of Georgia. The mud was about yay high, and so every time you take anything off or you put anything inside of it, it becomes covered in dirt still, but it is an awesome car to drive, and I think, you know, I paid 59 grand for it the first time, I just paid 70 grand getting it back, and so I'm really happy to have it.
Did you wrap it blue because it's a flood title?
A bit. I also sold, when I worked at Lamborghini Atlanta, a blue Le Mans 08 Gallardo Spyder that was very much this look, and I just thought it would really fit the lines of the car well. I always buy the worst examples of the coolest cars that I can find.
It's the best way to do it.
That's kind of my shtick. And so this time, there was a perfect example of a terrible car, and I love it, but that always means that they're black. And so cheap cars are always black. I think that's your spec, but
Chris and Car spec.
There
He
we
knows
go.
the Chris and Car spec.
That's what I've heard. So fortunately, when you go to buy your Chris and Car spec cars, you're going to get a better deal because black cars are always cheaper.
That's right.
And so we've had a lot of black cars that don't show up very well on camera. That may mean there has to be an on-camera Chris and Car spec.
That's
but
right.
That
That's
means that we end up wrapping them. And so the Bentley was black. A couple other cars were black, and so I love it in blue. It's an old wrap now, and we've got all the sponsors from the year 2020 back there, and so it's super cool, just kind of as a reminder of that project. So we ended up doing 10 Car Trek series over the years.
Now, right behind it, folks, we have a Lamborghini Murciélago LP640. I would be lying if I said it was the only Lamborghini Murciélago LP640 in this collection here, but I'm sure it has a very interesting story, as all of these cars do, so I would love to hear what the story is with this car.
Well, you just shot with another one of my former LP640s.
Yes, the Monterey Blue one.
The Monterey Blue car I bought accidentally last year on Cars and Bids because this is my favorite car. It came out in 2001, the Murciélago, when I was 16 years old, and it just, nothing will ever be cooler than the coolest cars when you start driving.
It's your poster car.
Exactly, it is my poster car. And fortunately, because I had a background in the exotic car rental industry, I had built up just bulletproof rock star car credit in my late teens, early 20s. And so I was able to buy one, you know, really, really young. And fortunately, that was before the world sort of came to appreciate and understand them. And so I actually I started the list because the factory didn't have any records of how many manual cars they had ever sold, and really how many they even made, or how many Mercies they'd made, because there's published numbers of like 4,099, and those are not exactly true. But over the last 15 years, I've figured out exactly how rare they are, and it turns out there's only 23 US coupes and 10 US roadsters. That'll matter in a moment. 88 worldwide coupes, 16 worldwide roadsters of my favorite car, the manual LP640. So this is the highest mileage US car. I've got about 500 more miles to go to be the highest mileage one in the world.
How many miles are
About 56,000.
56,000. That is more miles than my daily driver, more miles than any daily driver that I've ever owned on a Mercy LP640, which I can't imagine is a very comfortable car to put 50,000+ miles.
You know, to be honest, I find it to be extremely comfortable. I probably because I've contorted my back into so many of them, owning 9 over the last decade now. But I would say it's a car that I don't mind taking on long trips. I've driven it to Vegas and back, I've driven it to Scottsdale and back, I've driven it to Miami and back a handful of times, and so they actually are pretty good grand touring cars, which you don't really look at it and think that in the same way that you would about an F12 or something like that.
Right.
But I find that once I'm, kind of assumed the crouch in the position, it works quite well. And so this car was not originally Verde Draco. There were no Verde Draco cars sold in the United States for the Murci, and so it was my favorite car actually because of this one. The Top Gear used press car, and this one was signed by Mr. Ben Collins, the Stig, who did the lightning lap of the car. Wow. And I just always thought it looked spectacular. And the car was black, as all cheap exotic cars are. Exactly. And so, but it had been repainted badly in the front. Never really crashed, which was unfortunate because I could have gotten it cheaper if it were. And
is this the only car that hasn't been crashed in the collection? Oh, no, we'll get to that. There are a few that have.
There's one more, but the average number of crashes per car is well over one. I will tell you that much. And so I actually ended up getting this car effectively for free because I had bought the nicest one that exists, a Verde Ithaca 08, the last coupe built as a manual for the US, and it was way too nice for me. And the values had skyrocketed, and I sold it and used the profit to buy the worst one. And that's always
That's how
my
you do
thing.
it.
That's how I do it. That's how I do it. And so this is the free Lamborghini, and I love it. I'll be honest, when I bought it 5 years ago, the clutch would already slip a little bit, and it would misfire occasionally. And those are still the reality of owning this car. And
so, it was free. It was free.
Exactly. And so I don't worry about anything.
A little slip in the clutch.
That's it. But I'm about to have to bite off the big engine out service on this one and maybe the other one. And so it's going to be an interesting summer of automotive expenditure.
At almost 60,000 miles, I mean, that's not bad to have to replace the engine. Not on a gorgeous free car.
Oh, we don't have to replace the engine. We just got to retime the valves, clutch, throwout bearing, everything else.
I'm not a wrench. I hear something with the engine, I think it's got to be completely replaced. Next up, what I thought was a Diablo VT, but clearly there are massive SV livery across the entire car, so I'm a little bit slow today. But we have a bright orange, you'll be able to tell me the exact color, but Lamborghini Diablo SV, which the common theme here is that they all have a very cool story, so please.
Absolutely. So I just got this car, well, I got it about 8 months ago out of Japan. I bought it in one of their little 1-minute arcade auctions, and so you just bid, and I actually won it, and then they don't accept the number. Then they run it again the next week, and I won it again for less money, and they did accept the number.
Wow.
And so it was kind of right before everybody figured out just how rare these are. There's only 343 Diablo SVs ever made, which is exactly the same number of Duesenbergs that were ever made. And so I just think that the car checks so many boxes. It's kind of the perfect complement to an LP640 or a Murci.
Right.
I think the SV is the one to have from a simplicity perspective, from a mechanical perspective, and just from a driver engagement perspective. So the car was originally Rosso Imola, and it was at one point wrapped in this kind of pearlescent rhinestone pink, red, and white livery with neon lights around everywhere. And it's a thing for the ex-Yakuza to put rhinestones on everything on their show-off Lamborghinis. And so there were rhinestones everywhere on the key, on the shifter, and things like that. I have left them on the air vents. That's one of the main things they do is rhinestone air vents for the Yakuza. And so I think that's just a perfect homage to its past. Now, the paint was terrible. It had these terrible aftermarket wheels. Wing on it the size of a picnic table. The rear bumper was deleted, and it was just rough.
It had a bigger wing than it currently has on it.
Yeah, it's actually up on the VinWiki set now, so you'll see it momentarily. But they, at the end of the day, I just thought, all right, we got to bring this car back to at least be presentable. Sure. I don't want a Concours level anything ever. I want cars and coffee presentable.
Absolutely.
I want to be able to drive past someone and then think, that doesn't look terrible. And so that's really where we're at. It's got the wrong seats, the wrong steering wheel, the wrong everything inside. But it is a great driving car, and somehow it was modified previously because I can fit. Diablos, not like Murcis, I really don't fit very well at 6'5". And so I drove the car immediately from LA off the boat to SEMA. And we wrapped it at Glossit, one of our sponsors' headquarters, kind of Verde Scandal, which is a bright non-metallic green. And I liked that look a lot, but then Netflix wanted to borrow it for a show. where they were essentially replicating the storyline of buying it from like a terrible previous owner overseas.
Right.
And so they were buying it out of Mexico. So they asked if they could paint it. And my favorite color of any car is pearlescent orange. And so this color would be called Arancio California on a Diablo SV, VT, or GT. Those were the colors. And then it turned into Arancio Atlas and Arancio Borealis on the Mercy and the Gallardo. And so I asked them to paint it that way. They did it in 2 days behind a building in El Paso, and it shows. I'm going to ask, everybody stand a little further back and don't notice the orange peel and the fact that they didn't really tape it off all that well.
I'm just looking at the rhinestones on the air vents.
That's
here.
the distraction. So you don't notice the paint when you look at the
and
rhinestones.
And the red seats with the orange paint.
Don't worry about that either.
I'm not even worried about it.
Exactly.
From 5 feet away, I thought it was orange piping on the seats.
And we'll keep that in their imagination. Now, I do have a nice car. And it's a total accident. I did not mean to buy this nice car, but this is a 2009 Spyker C8 Laviolette that I bought 2 years ago from Missy Misdemeanor Elliott. And she had bought the car brand new from the dealership that I worked at. I worked at Lamborghini Atlanta, which was also at the time Lotus, Spyker, Aston, and McLaren. And so they had sold this car new right before I went to work there in 2009. She barely drove the car. It was at her house that she hadn't been to in years. And so I bought it totally blind. I just had to take her mom's word for it. She didn't know how many miles it had. She didn't know anything about it.
Right.
She knew it didn't start, but she didn't know why. And so I expected it to be much worse. And it turned out that it was actually quite nice. And so it's one of 29 US Laviolettes, one of about 260 cars that Spyker built from 2003 to 2010 during their kind of lifespan in this chapter. A lot of aeronautically inspired things. You got your Shinalock wheels, the louvered fenders, the functional roof scoop, the glass roof, the floor hinge pedals, the exposed gear linkage. I just think it has so many touches. A lot of people call them baby Paganis, and I think that's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
But it's the clamshell build and everything else. I love it. It's such a pleasant car to drive. Uses the Audi 4.2 V10. It's got 400 horsepower. The later cars have timing chains rather than timing belts, so the maintenance is quite easy. I've got some local experts that can keep it going. There is like the best one on earth is going to sell at Monterey this year, so maybe they'll go up in price. But that's kind of my thing. Is like I can't afford cars that depreciate. It's my greatest allergy in the whole wide world. I like to look like I won the lottery 10 or 15 years ago. I guess it's now becoming 15 or 20 years ago, but I like what I liked when I was young.
I think it looks like you won the lottery yesterday. I mean, there's not much I see here that doesn't look in fantastic condition. Some from 5 feet away, but listen, it looks like you won the lottery yesterday.
Well, I appreciate that. Thankfully, I just have a good relationship with Premier Financial Services, our financing sponsor. Next.
This
is probably my favorite car that's here.
What spec is this?
This is, I don't know if matte constitutes a Chris's car spec. It does?
Yeah.
All right. The manual LP640 Roadster is one of the rarest versions of anything Lamborghini has ever made. You'd have manual SVs and Mura SVJs as kind of the only thing that's much more rare than this. 10 US cars, 16 worldwide, 2 identically in this spec. They were both ordered by Ralph Lauren new, and he didn't take delivery of either of them. And so one of them was sold through Lamborghini St. Louis and is now sitting next to my Verde Ithaca LP640 coupe in a billionaire's garage in Seattle.
Very cool.
And then the other one, a scammy cabinet installer in New Jersey, conned a mentally ill person into wiring $470,000 of his dollars to Manhattan Motor Cars, and he bought this car for him without knowing that for years and years. And he would then go on to crash it not once, not twice, but in fact 3 times, 2 with insurance claims. 1, he was too drunk to get his insurance to pay out anything. He ran into a bridge. And the rest of the time when he would file these insurance claims, he would take the money and then he would buy cheap aftermarket kit car parts and put them on this car, and he would just pocket the rest. And if the damage didn't amount to an insurance claim, he carried around a can of black Rust-Oleum, because it was originally a Nero Nemesis factory matte black car, and he would spray paint over the damage. So this is a factory matte black car from '09, which was not the best matte black paint, let's be honest. And then it's got Rust-Oleum on every panel from something. And then I didn't want to deal with repainting it matte black, so I just wrapped it in matte black vinyl, and then put matte clear bra over it to give it a more mattiness, and that is what we have here. So there's like a lot of layers that an archaeologist years from now will excavate and find the history of this car. But yeah, it's the 3-time crashed manual LP640 Roadster. It's got 26,000 miles, which makes it the highest mileage one of these in the world, which is fun.
You have a lot of the highest mileage of pretty much every car. Every supercar that shouldn't be the highest mileage, he has, and that is the coolest thing because they're for cars and coffee, they're to be driven, they're not garage queens. Folks, we've wrapped up with the supercars here, but one of the coolest parts of this entire garage is upstairs at the VinWiki HQ.
That's it. That's where we make the magic happen. That is the studio, and it's time for you to sit down in the chair and tell us some stories.
A little bit nervous, but listen, it's gonna be fun. We're just gonna tell a story here, folks.
That's right. You're gonna do great. Wow. So the VinWiki set has actually been 4 different places. It was in a warehouse, then in an office, then in another part of that office, and then here. And so it's been here for about the last 5 years. And so we've shot about, 3,000 stories, give or take. And got about 2 billion views across different platforms and things like that. And so it's fun for me because the premise of VinWiki is that these cars are so much more than just whatever they were from the manufacturer. They're the stories that they accumulate, the relationships that they have with their owners and things like that. And so, it's just a assortment of various artifacts.
A lot of wheels, a lot of license plates. Are these all your license plates?
No, they're not.
Okay.
I had a bunch of them from trades that we had back at the dealership, a bunch of broken keys from cars we had at the dealership.
Wow.
And so I just I had a friend of mine that was a videographer, and I called him and I'm like, hey, we're trying to market the VinWiki app, because that came a year before the YouTube channel.
Right.
And that was like a crowdsourcing version of Carfax, and it still exists, but as soon as the media side took off, that really became kind of the cart driving the horse. And so, yeah, there's just a bunch of broken, that's a 612 exhaust, that's a Turbo S exhaust, that's the whole John Tamarian blue in the bottom of my Gallardo engine when he rented it 20 years ago.
Oh my God.
That's the diff from one LP640 that got driven too much with the wrong.
This is a gated manual transmission from a Lamborghini.
Well, this is a paperweight.
It's a paperweight.
That Lamborghini sold, I guess,
Is it
right.
heavy?
It's a little bit, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of gives you the idea.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's
cool.
The shift apparatus from a Gallardo. They all go bad. Bunch of license plates, a bunch of things, and just a whole lot of fun. That is the wing that was on the Diablo when I got it.
Oh my God, yes. The Diablo we were talking about earlier that already had a big spoiler. This was the spoiler that was on it. Now has a ton of autographs on it. Ed, I'll sign it if you'd like.
I was going to ask for you. Yeah. A lot of those people had to help us push it to start it because we couldn't turn it off, so we couldn't get the right battery until we got to Vegas. And so it's always lived a hard life, but we're trying to just make it harder.
Very cool. Well, on that note, Ed, thank you so much.
That's it. Now it's your turn.
Yes. Let's have a seat, and we'll see you on VinWiki.
Yeah, let's do it.